This is problem number 15 in section 4.4, the second problem that you're watching the video for to show you how to do proofs. Back to those notes that I gave you at the beginning here. First thing you're supposed to do is copy the picture. Well, I have that put off to the side here. You'd have to look in your book for what you need to do there. So I'm going to take this triangle and copy it over here. Label your things with your letters. You need to have those letters on your picture. That's a W there. Okay. They have marked this angle up here, and we can mark that in our picture also, since they already have it marked. Really what they're trying to show is that these two angles here are congruent. So I'm going to split it a little bit, and that comes back to this part that we'll get to in a little bit. So now my picture is copied. The second thing you want to look at doing is put your givens in the proof. So I'm given that triangle XYZ is equilateral. So I'm going to put that up here in my proof. Triangle XYZ is equilateral. Oops, I'm putting that in the wrong spot. Remember, what goes on the first line, that gives your reason. So that should be my given up here. And then down here should go triangle XYZ is equilateral. Okay, try not to make that mistake. It's a common one, just the way the form is filled out to fill it in. So givens on top and then your thing in here. We have a second given, so I'm going to put that in also. So given WY bisects angle Y. Okay, well, let's look at what they're given here and talk about those for a second. So I'm given that triangle XYZ is equilateral. Equilateral means all the sides are the same. If all the sides are the same, then I know by the definition of what equilateral means that XY is congruent to YZ, which is congruent to XZ there. And I knew that just because they said that we're equilateral. So my reason here is going to be definition of equilateral. Okay. Now, whenever you write something down, you should always mark it in your problem. So I can mark this side here, this side here. Now, this one over here gets split in half. So that one's going to be hard to mark, and I'll explain to you in a minute here. We really don't even need to use that. So I'm going to cross it off. WY bisects angle Y is our other given over here. Well, bisect means to cut in half. So angle Y here is getting cut in half by this blue line, WY. That's where they get these two red marks here. The reason here is because it says bisect, so my reason is going to be definition of angle bisector. And then my two angles that are congruent, I have to give it its three-letter names. So X, Y, W, that's the one on the left, is congruent to angle WYZ. That's the one on the right here. And those are already marked in red, so I don't have to mark anything on my proof there. Now with that, I've got a side and an angle marked here. Before we go any further, let's look at where we want to end up with our proof. Our proof statement is that XW is congruent to ZW. Okay. Our proof statement here is that XW is congruent to ZW. You're going to put that down here on the bottom. XW is congruent to ZW. Whatever is written as a proof statement is going to be the ending box in your proof. Now, for the reason up above that, we're not sure about that yet, but you can't mark this in your picture because you don't know it yet. But let's look at it. We want to know that XW, this line on the bottom, is the same as that line on the bottom there. If this triangle on the left, XYW, was the same as a triangle on the right, ZYW, then the two triangles were going to be congruent. So I can kind of assume, especially with the way that this is laid out, that if I prove the triangles to be congruent here, which is going to go in for this step here, triangle XYW, and you have to make sure that as you write this, you get your letters kind of matched up. Well, it looks like X is going to match up with Z, so triangle Z, Y matches up with Y because of the red marks, And then W is going to match up with W on both sides, like that. Proving the two triangles to be congruent. Now above that we have our different ways to prove triangles congruent. First choice is all parts matching up. That's just a lot of work though, so we never use it, so you can almost cross it off. Option number 2, side, side, side. Side, angle, side. Angle, side, angle. Angle, angle, side. And HL, which we'll cover later. So right now we're not going to use HL. Well, looking at what I already have marked, I have a side and an angle of just each triangle. Only look at one triangle at a time as you're doing this. So side and an angle marked over here. Over here I have a side and an angle. Well, knowing that I already have an angle marked, I know I'm probably not going to use side, side, side. I'm going to use something that has a side and an angle, so at least an S and an A, and then we got to figure out what the third missing piece is that we need to do yet. Well, what else can we mark in the picture? We can mark the side down the middle. Now when you're looking for what else you can mark, you want to look for sides down the middle, you want to look for vertical angles. If you have parallel lines, a lot of times you want to look for alternate interior angles, but here the line down the middle, that can be marked. And that's line YW. So down here in this I have YW is congruent to YW. Okay. When we write something silly like that, YW is congruent to YW, the reason is the reflexive property, where it's the same on both sides. And remember, you can also now mark that in your picture, which I've done up there. Looking at my picture now, okay, and only look at 1/2. So as you're doing this, I'm going to see if I can get a box here, just to kind of cover up. Oh, it's going in front anyway, so I guess that didn't work that well, but maybe imagine that you're only looking at the part that's in my box or the part that's outside my box. I have two sides and an angle marked. And the angle is where the two sides meet, so it's the included angle. So this is side, angle, side, which would be this right here for my reason. So these two are out. So kind of going together, this and this and this all come together to bring me to side, angle, side as my reason. I've already completed the part right here with two triangles being congruent. I'm only missing one line here. This is an important rule to remember, and you're going to use this anytime normally you have two triangles being congruent, and then you have another step in your proof that goes after that. You're going to have either two angles or two sides that match up down here. When you look at the order of your letters, the XW, that's the first here and the last there, and then the other one you have Z double. It's also the first and last. Those parts match up. When parts match up, this is the name of the rule that we're going to abbreviate in a minute. It stands for this: corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Now nobody wants to have to write that whole thing out every time, so we simply abbreviate it C, P, C, T, C. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. C, P, C, T. With that, we complete our proof, going down to our proof statement down here on the bottom, and you are done with number 15.